Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DeJulius. This week, John talks with best-selling author John Ruhlin. John is the world's leading authority in maximizing customer loyalty through radical generosity. John has developed a system of using generosity to gain access to elite clients and generate thousands of referrals. In this episode, you'll learn how an Ohio farm boy became the #1 greatest salesman in Costco history, how gifting can be your greatest referral tool, what most companies get wrong with sending gifts, the giftology recipe, and what he will be sharing in his keynote at the 2022 Customer Service Revolution Conference. Now here's your host, John DeJulius.
Hello, revolutionaries, and welcome to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And I am so excited today to bring on John Ruhlin, who is maximizing customer loyalty through radical generosity. Welcome, John.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me, bro. This is going to be great.
I'm so excited. So I'm going to give you a little, our audience, and you don't even know this, probably, our background of getting, to hear about John. To me, it's been the last probably 12 years that you've really, in my world, popped up on the radar and the speaking circuit and have just blown up. And John's also from Ohio, from a small town. I'm from Ohio, small town that I've never even heard of, and I live in Ohio. But we speak at all these EO events and YPO events and these, Vern Harnish events and all these great things. And for a while, I was, getting, some, hey, you were the #1 speaker, you're the #1 speaker, and then all of a sudden you're top 2 speakers. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm the top 2? Who is the #1? Right? It's got to be like, Magic Johnson, like someone who has an advantage that I can't have, or Colin Powell, and they're John Ruhlin. Who the frick is John Ruhlin? And then I look at the topic and the gifting. What the hell's gifting, right? I mean, gifting. Right. The old school of gifting is in December, send your top 50 clients, the brownies. How hard is that? And damn, you just kept on crushing it. And then now I've gotten to see you spoken at conferences and I've read your book, Giftology. And dude, you are awesome. So let's start with, how did an Ohio farm boy, get to where he is today, became the greatest seller in Cutco's company history, and also become one of the top sought after speakers, best-selling authors, and just the person to go to for referrals. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Well, you're making me like float around. Like, dude, you're getting. Right. I hope you're doing my intro this fall. Yeah. Dude. So, I mean, the funny part is, I grew up on a farm milking goats. Like, people are like, John, did you have like the right? Was your dad like in the country club or a speaker or a business leader? Like, none of those things. My dad was like a water treatment engineer. Like, he was a farmer. I learned work ethic growing up on the farm. And I think, that grit and tenacity in today's world is in low supply, I think, in a lot of cases. And so, like we were talking before the show, like being Rudy, like I was the Rudy. I was the kid that, overachieved and hustled and whatever else, because I hated blue collar.
I was going to say, did working on the farm make you want to get out and do different? Like, that wasn't like, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, part of it was the work, like I'm baling hay and my friends are swimming inside, Ohio summers, 110 degrees in the hay mile, like covered with like dust and chaff. Sucks. Milking goats at 6 a.m. and showing up at the school, like, smelling like a goat.
Yeah.
Crap on your boots. Not cool.
Right.
wanting the Air Jordans and having to settle for the Ames or the Walmart specials.
Right.
Not cool. So I think part of it was growing up poor. Part of it was my parents were divorced, and I kind of felt like I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove myself because I felt like the underdog always. And so I wanted to go like make my mom proud, wanted to go make my family proud. So I was going to go be a doctor. I was going to go be a DO or a chiropractor. My mom was into health and wellness. And went to Malone University, small Christian school in Ohio. Yeah. Almost went to Xavier. Thought I was going to be a doctor. My life changed because I went and out of desperation, I was selling Cutco. I had no interest in sales.
Job, correct me if I'm wrong, for college kids.
Yeah, they work with in the last 70 years.
Skill sets.
Oh, it's insane. If you look at the founder of Uber, whether you like him or not, his first job, slinging blades at 17. Wow. Travis Kalanick, was $80 billion, $100 billion company. Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning, obviously a global book. His first.
I say this to John. Tell me if I'm correct. It's the modern day selling encyclopedias, right? Our parents and them were door to door selling encyclopedias. Is that? Would you say it's that?
Yeah. Well, what's cool about it is that, and then it's plus. So the plus is they teach you. You're not door knocking, you're not cold calling. They teach you how to build relationships with your warm network and ask for referrals.
Center of influence.
Centers of influence. And so when I retired from Cutco, although to this day a gifting agency still does millions of dollars in the stupid knives. I had a suitcase filled with little lead cards back in the day. This is 22 years ago. I have probably 5,500 people I never got to call to sell knives to. That's how many referrals they teach you to ask for. So if you go build great relationships and understand how to ask for referrals, you never cold calling anybody. I'm calling you and saying, hey, I was talking to Shep Hyken. I was at his house. We made him and Cindy dinner. He said, you like nice things. And so you call John. Well, now because Shep bought knives, you're like, all right, college kid, I'll give him a shot. And then if you qualify right, you learn how to qualify your leads, handle objections. I would sell 9 out of 10 people $1,000. That's 20 years ago. That's probably $3,000 today. And it's because the training, it's like Tony Robbins meets the encyclopedia, the understanding how to build relationships and be positive and enthusiasm and all these things. To me, I love college, but if I had to trade my 4-year degree for my first summer selling knives, I would, because I learned so much in those 3-4 months. Slinging blades, which I was like, if it lasted a week, I thought it would be a miracle. Ended up, now being a partnership. I still have a partnership handshake agreement. They're a $300 million company. The owners of the company are still partners of ours on the giftology front, but they're just incredible. They're really like a personal development company that happens to sell knives on the side. That's really, I can't say enough good things about them.
All right. So you crush it. How long did you sell knives?
So I sold. The first couple of years, I realized early on, I pitched my girlfriend's dad, who is a lawyer. He's a rainmaker. He was always giving things away. He was the modern day what I wanted to be. I was like, I want to be him when I'm 60.
Which is so bizarre because he's from the legal industry, right?
Yeah.
And that's unusual. So he really got it.
He played the long game. I remember seeing him write 10 handwritten notes every day. He would buy he'd find a deal on noodles, buy a semi load. Everybody at church the next Sunday would walk away with a year's supply. I'm like, Paul, that's $30,000. Are you nuts? He just showed up for people in uncommon ways. And because of that, he would do something for somebody that was a janitor that nobody cared about. And then 30 years later, that person inherits money. And who do they call first? They call Paul, because he always loved on people and respected people with no strings attached. He played the true long game. So when I pitched him the idea of knives, it's awkward. Pitching your girlfriend's dad knives, weirdest conversation in the world. Right. But Paul was super kind. He didn't make me feel weird. And I pitched him pocket knives because all his clients are $100 pocket knives. They're all into hunting, fishing. They're all CEOs. They're dudes. It's Ohio. It's hunting, fishing season. Right. And he changed my life forever. He's like, I want to order knives, but I want to order the paring knives. I'm like, you want to give a bunch of grown men CEOs, $1 million and billion-dollar companies, a kitchen tool? That's weird. Why? And he said, John, the reason I have more referrals, deal flow, access.
He's not doing this as a favor to his daughter's boyfriend.
No, he was thinking strategically.
Wow.
So he dropped $10,000 on knives. And then here's the kicker. He buys kitchen stuff. I'm like, why would you do that? He's like, I build a relationship with the family. If you take care of your employee's family, your client's family, don't take care of the executive. Take care of their wife or their husband or their kids. I call it the inner circle now, the pets, the kid. That's where you can spend $1,000 and get $100,000 in impact. Paul got that just strategically, naturally. So he starts giving me the knives he paid $100, $200 for each. And he said, go meet that CEO of that lumber company that I know and give them a piece and say, whether you buy anything or not, Paul loves this stuff and wanted you to have a piece. So he transferred his social capital. I'm a country bumpkin kid. I had no sales experience. I was scared to death. But because of Paul's belief in me, I started to go in and I realized nobody cared about the knife, although the knife's awesome. They cared about referrals. So I didn't become a gifting expert. I became a referral expert. I became a loyalty expert or a access expert. And we happened to use the knives as a delivery vehicle. So by the time I was a senior in college, I'd shifted the business, called it Ruhlin Promotion Group, now called Giftology. And I started
in college. I know you switched it.
Yeah, I switched it to PR and marketing. Okay. When I realized I wasn't going to go be a doctor,
right.
I was like, what do I need to learn? And so I went and got a PR marketing degree.
I actually think I made a mistake. I should be interviewing your father-in-law, right? I mean, damn.
Yeah, but the worst part is I ended up not marrying that girl. So that relationship blew up. But I still, if you look at the acknowledgments, I give him all the credit, and he writes back to me. He's like, John, I didn't do anything. I just opened some doors.
What a cool.
And I was like, Paul, like you did everything. Like watching you live your life and how you built relationships and how you got referrals and how you treated people. And then you were my first corporate client. The next one took me another 12 months to get another company to buy. I thought everybody's going to buy knives for gifts. Nobody cared about how sharp they were. Nobody cared. So I was selling knives to business owners because they could buy a lot for themselves personally. And then I learned over time how to craft and understand nobody cares about the knives. Nobody cares about the widget. They care about the results. Like if you can get me 10 times more referrals, right. I don't care if you're selling chickens. I'll buy chickens. It was about the knife. It was about what that would produce in them with top of mind awareness and likability and all these other things. So it took me a while to realize it wasn't about like, not everybody was going to be as strategic thinker as Paul was.
I mean, he was a rainmaker. And before we transition to rocking it at Cutco, graduating from college and getting into your giftology business, you said some freaking gems. Show up for people in uncommon ways. Love that. That is so cool. Let's talk about that a little bit. What does that look like?
Well, I think that most people, when they're building relationships, they whether it's clients, employees, it's like, hey, it's Christmas, we got to do something. Hey, gift card, bottle of wine. Everything is very transactional. Right. Hey, we signed a deal. Here's your gift. And it's, or we like most people don't, they do a dinner. It's like at Morton's, and I'm just like, what if you did a once in a lifetime experience for the dinner? Like I just hung out with the owners of the Reds, Bob Castellini, one of the owners. I mean, I was able to give one of my mentors, Matthew Kelly, who's written like 15 books. He's getting ready to sell his 50 millionth book. His son, one of his 5 kids, loves baseball. He's 8 years old. So we got to go hang out in the owner's suite with the governor, Mike DeWine of Ohio, doing batting practice on the field. A lot of, 20,000 people can go to a game 81 times a year. And it's just vanilla. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 4, it's a 5, it's a 6. But when you do whether it's an experience or whether I call it an artifact or a heart bomb, because the word gift makes you think of Harry and David baskets and a gift card. It's like, what's the least I can get away with? But when you say, if I really value this relationship's worth $1 million to me, what's the most I can afford to invest in this relationship? It's a lot of freaking, like you can invest tens of thousands, but most people are like, oh, check the box and give them a thing at Tiffany's for $250.
Right.
And so the uncommon thing is if you're going to do a dinner, if you're going to do wine, if you're going to do an experience, if you're going to do a physical gift, go all in. And Paul was that way. Like he wouldn't pick up the tab for one table. He'd pick up the tab for the whole restaurant. Not because he was manipulative, like he would actually duck out the back and not take credit for it. So I learned, go all in on the little details. And because most people suck at gifting so bad, they throw their logo on it. They buy crappy stuff from China. They do all of the things wrong. If you can take that area where most people think they're a 7 out of 10 and really they're a -3, if you can go be a 10 out of 10 at gifting, that might be the one thing that they brag to all their friends and family about. Like we have home builders as clients. Nobody brags that the windows are in straight or that they don't leak. If you can love on them and surprise and delight them with something at a time that they're not expecting it. For most builders, we tell them to send the gift 12 or 24 months after the home's built. Why? Because most people do the gift at closing.
Right.
It's transactional. It's expected. It's obligatory. You hit them with $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 love bomb. 24 months later, they're like, I thought you forgot about me and you're still loving on me.
Yes.
They're going to tell that story 100 times more. Right. And that home builder never has to worry about referrals just by shifting what and when And then, so that to me is the uncommon methodology. It's the recipe, and it works.
You also said play the long game. And I love this. Paul, your mentor, he transferred his social capital. That's so cool. Like what? I mean, especially a rock star like him, right? That everyone in the city knows that. I'm sure, like we said, Shep, if Shep comes to me and says, you got to meet this guy, John Ruhlin. Okay. Like, I'm not going to, that's all the vetting I need, because Shep, Paul was your guy for that, which is really cool. I want to talk about some things. So I thought I was better, like you said, and we all think we're better at gifting, but I know after reading your book and hearing you speak, I have a long way to go. But the good thing I did was, I thought the stupidest thing was to send clients gifts in December, right? Thanksgiving to Christmas, because I used to always say, John, if you came to visit me in December at my office, back when we had offices, I'd be like, oh, John, I got you a gift. Come over here. And there was a table of gifts. I don't know who they're from, right? The chocolate from my accountant, and I was re-gifting it, right? And
of course.
A lot of CEOs aren't even in the office much at that time. And so if my accountant did or didn't send me the chocolate brownies, I didn't know, I didn't miss it. So what we did, but not to the level that you're talking about, is we always said, December, let's pick June, right? It's a slower time of year. You have no competition. If I send you a gift right now, I have no other competition, right? If it's not your birthday or anything, it's the only thing you get. You're like, well, that's bizarre, uncommon. And so we'd send books of someone or whatever, because the other thing was they're all going on vacation, and maybe they'll bring it and they'll remind them, hey, this came from, and it's not even what he does. So I was a little better at that, but I want to talk about, all this. One more thing I got from you. I read your book, and you gave some example about house cleaning, right? And so I loved it. So as you know, our big event every November, October is the customer service revolution. And it's brutal on the staff. It's our holidays, and our staff doesn't sleep for probably certain people that run it don't sleep for the last 90 days, but everyone is just killing it. And their families probably aren't happy with them, and they're sleeping downtown and preparing, what it's like. And so from reading your book, I sent them all, not, usually I give them the gift, my staff. I sent their families all gifts to have their whole house clean. And now I'm not the bad guy anymore that is keeping mom or dad away from home. They're like, they loved it, and they talk about it all the time. I got that from you. So
it's huge. I mean, most people don't put themselves in the other person's shoes. Say, do they really want another dinner out away from their family? Do they really want a ball game where no, they want to be with their family. Most people, like, taking care of your house is a big deal. Everybody's burning the candle at both ends, husbands and wives and whatever else. Like, it's tough. It's it costs us $3,000 an employee per year, but it gives us, like, when we have to hire somebody, like, there's a waiting list, because all of our employees, they've told their friends and family and everybody else. And they're like, I got a house cleaner for a day. And they're like, no, for the year. It's like, nobody brags about
your employees that clean their house for permanent.
And that's part of it. Nobody brags about 401k, health insurance, like all the things that cost us as business owners and leaders a lot of money. It's tens of thousands of dollars to offer all of these things that are just table stakes.
Process, you ask them how big your house is, just in case.
That's a good question. Maybe should.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
It goes a long way. So we try to find those things that nobody would do. Like, it's like, with the spa experience, whatever else, it's like if somebody remembers that you like pineapple instead of cucumbers in your drink, and they remember and do that one stupid little thing that's personal to you that makes your life better or makes you smile, like, all of a sudden that becomes the little thing. And so we try to do that with our employees, try to do that with our vendors. Like, I send nicer gifts. We're getting ready to send an ice cream truck to Cutco. Why? Because there's 800 employees there that if they don't make knives, I don't have product to sell. And so, like, most people are like, oh, they beat their vendors down and beat them. I'm like, why? Like, you don't have a company without your vendors. How about you start treating them like gold versus like dirt? And they're like, why would I do that? I'm like, I learned that from an $800 million company that's in the incentive space, OC Tanner. When Rolex comes to town, they're the biggest buyers of Rolex in the US. They wine and dine Rolex. And I said, why? And they said, well, we don't have Rolex. We don't have product to sell. And so we appreciate that are vendors just as highly as most people appreciate their clients.
And that's so key. Like, finally people are on board with the employee experience, customer experience, but it's got to be about the vendor experience too. Like, to me, it's not CX, it's BX, brand experience. And I don't care if it's a stranger coming in, if it's the UPS man delivering, and I'm very sensitive to the UPS man because I did that in my former days, right? But take care of everyone the same way, not just those who could take care of you, right? And so, all right, let's talk about this, John. So let's talk about your business, because in the past 15, 20 years, you've developed a system using generosity to gain access to elite clients and generate thousands of referrals. I love that. You help companies turn their clients into their own personal sales force to drive exponential growth. So talk to us what your business does and how it does this.
Yeah. Well, a lot of companies now, because of you and guys like Shep, have a customer experience plan, or they have an operations plan, or they have a finance plan. But you ask people, like, what's their relationship plan? Like, how are you loving on all of your key relationships? Because almost every business rises and falls on humans. Like, it's great to have great technology, but if you don't have humans, like whether you're Google or I don't care who you are, like, business ceases to exist. And most people just check a box like, hey, you've worked here for 10 years. Here's your catalog of crap. Right. Or, hey, we did, $500,000 of business with you, or franchises or whatever. Like, it's very it's mediocre at best on the actual physical, like how I'm showing gratitude and appreciation. And we all know that people make decisions on their work ethic and how they show up based upon how they feel. Like, we're emotional beings. And yet most of the things that we do are very black and white, very transactional. And so I tell people you should
call it return on relationships, which I love that. I love it.
Measure that. Like, if you have a customer that, I don't know whether it's 10 grand a year or $1 million a year or $10 million a year, like, what's, that customer sticks with you for a certain amount of time, like, that's worth a certain amount of money, right? Retention. But what most people don't do is they don't love on that relationship and get them to duplicate themselves, which is basically an unpaid sales rep. Like, that's what referrals are, is somebody goes out and wants to see you win. They're not getting a commission check. They're not anything. Like, how do you get somebody to go do something for you without pay? It's usually based upon their experience. And then the cherry on top of the sundae, it's that extra thing that makes them say, holy crap, I already like them. Now I love them. I wanted to see them win. Now I'm going to have the awkward conversation at Christmas when we're talking about whatever. I'm going to bring up my financial advisor because I freaking love that guy. Right. Or, people are raving fans of Chick-fil-A. Why? It's because of how they feel. Yes, they're a good chicken sandwich, but a lot of what Truett built into Chick-fil-A and these iconic brands is the intangibles of how somebody feels. And so our feeling is, if you can lay out a plan for your relationships, whether it's employees, clients, vendors, suppliers, dealers, investors, franchises, and start to use math in the same way, like, what's these relationships worth? Oh, they're worth $1 billion. Okay, what percentage of that are we going to reinvest back into the relationships to keep them, to grow with them? And the secret sauce is, how do we get them to become unpaid sales reps for our brand? And that usually doesn't happen accidentally. That happens very intentionally. And our feeling is because people are visual and people are tangible, if you can send a physical thing, like if I send you a Rolex and it has your favorite quote or something that you spoke engraved onto it, and I show up out of the blue and talk about, every time you look at that watch, you say, man, that's a lot of money, 10 grand for a watch. But I could say, if John sends me one referral to a stage every year that pays me 50 grand,
right?
I mean, that watch is going to pay off in the first year 4 or 5x.
Right.
And then every year after that, every time he looks at it, I don't have to put my logo on or anything. So people oftentimes will drop 10 grand on a Super Bowl experience, or they'll drop 10, 15, 100 grand on a sponsorship or on dinners. But most people have not done that with a physical gift, an artifact, a heart bomb strategy at scale. And that's really, being thoughtful at scale is difficult. Like, how do you send something to somebody and have them feel like they're the only ones that got it, even if you're sending the same thing? That's what we started to get really good with the knives. Like, we had a client that wanted to send Tony Robbins the gift. What do you give Tony Robbins? I said, Pete, you have a relationship with him. Like, you're doing a partnership. We're going to do knives. He's like, dude, we're not sending Tony Robbins knives. I'm like, are you the gifting expert or am I? He's like, all right, Ruhlin, what are we going to send? I said, we're going to take this $5,000 knife set. And on all 40 of these knives, we're engraved quotes of wisdom he's spoken over the last 50 years. And then it's going to go into a $5,000 wood box called a strong box with a video screen. And you're going to pour out your heart and talk about future Robbins generations are going to be using these tools and be reminded of the legacy that him and Sage created together. He's like, that doesn't sound like a knife set. I'm like, no, the knives are a delivery vehicle. It's not about the stupid knives. He sent it off, didn't hear anything for 4 months. He gets a message late one night from Sage. She's in tears.
Sage is Tony's wife.
Yes.
Yes.
This is the most thoughtful thing anybody's ever sent us. Yeah, you could have sent a $50,000 watch. It wouldn't have been as valuable. Why? Because it was a delivery vehicle for a connection, a memory, a moment, a meaning. Everybody wants their life to. So we've done that with celebrity pastors and CEOs. We've taken the same knives. But
here's the beauty of this. One of the beauties of this is everyone, if they send a gift, put my logo on it.
Oh.
So constantly has to remember, the pen says the DeJulius Group or the Customer Service Revolution. You didn't do that because that doesn't have an emotional connection with you. Your quotes, your family's, philosophy or whatever.
Core values. Yep. If you understand that, like if people need to think about relationship building the same way, if your best friend's getting married, you're never going to put like compliments of the DeJulius Group on the Tiffany's vase you're giving your best friend. You're going to make that about them and their wedding date. It may be a special quote or scripture or something that's unique and special to them. And so that's where I like when we talk about the recipe, it's like people will say, John, I did giftology. It didn't work. I'm like, would you follow the recipe? And they're like, well, we did giftology-ish. I'm like, it's like baking bread. Like, I don't care if you bake it 100,000 times. If you forget yeast or you forget a couple ingredients, all of a sudden you don't get bread anymore. And with relationships, it's usually the little things. It's like people are like, we were just going to mail it from Amazon. I'm like, that's dumb. Like, that's automated. You need to send it from a one-to-one. It can't come from a team. It needs to be a handwritten note with it. So we have like all of these different steps in the recipe. People focused on the thing, thinking well, John, I'm going to do the knives. I'm like, if you don't follow the other 47 steps.
Are you ready to meet John, the DeJulius Group team, and your favorite podcast guests in person? Register now for the Customer Service Revolution Conference. Visit customerservicerevolution.com for tickets and details.
So give us some examples of what's in the recipe.
Yeah. So personalization is key. So no logos, absolutely never. And the only anomaly is if your logo happens to add value to the product. So if you're the Cubs, you can get away with putting your logo on it.
You love the Cubs. If you're a fan,
you love the Cubs.
Yeah. But most of us aren't. We don't have fans. So.
No. Well, and even the fans, like the Cubs are clients. We've done some crazy artifacts for them. When you're gifting the CMO of Pepsi or the CMO of Chick-fil-A or whoever, do they really want to use something with this big, huge logo on it, the size of a basketball? Even if it's a Rolex, no. So even if you're a fan, the higher up the food chain you go, the smaller the logo gets. The positioning of it's on the back. It's subtle. It's tasteful. Even if your logo adds value. Look at Lululemon. Their logo is the size of a dime, and people pay $100 for a T-shirt. I'm one of those guys. The logo, even for the most elite brands, tends to be
the same color on the color. So it
tone on tone,
black on black. So it's not like it's this obnoxious thing.
No. So we use that same philosophy, but personalization is key. No logos. Keep that off of it. It has to have a handwritten note that provides, in some cases, the note or the video is just as important, if not more important than what you're sending. Like we've done Rolexes before. We've done these, custom knife sets. It's the messaging behind it. You're not asking for referrals. You're talking about breaking bread and family and legacy. Like you're thinking about how to make this an artifact. If their house is on fire, and we've had this happen. Celebrities, clients, CEOs, executives are like, John, if my house is on fire, this is one of the 3 things I'm grabbing.
That's cool.
That's when you've gone past being a thing. Right. Nobody needs more stuff. Nobody needs more swag, but we all have room for a thoughtful artifact. That's why I love the word artifact or heirloom or heart bomb, because it's not like stuff's going to end up at Goodwill. It's going to end up in the trash can. It's going to end up washing the car on Saturdays. But an artifact. So thinking through the personalization, the person's name, their values, their mission statement, their scripture verses, their faith. We've done that with a number of Mormon clients. They're calling crying. These are guys that are running 9-10 figure companies. Why? Because of the meaning behind it. Handwritten note adds a personalization. The biggest thing, the reason we focus on the kitchen so much is it's hard to do things that are universal for humans. If you want to send something to 1,000 people, what's universal amongst everybody? Breaking bread and eating. If you think about whether you're in Idaho or New York City or Atlanta or Africa, what do you do with the people that you love or care about the most? You bring them to your home and you break bread. That's one of the things that's like universal across humans. Like that's the hub of the house. So if we can tie in, whether it's with the knife set or custom glassware or a wine tool that they would never go buy for themselves, that they'll use every day, but it has to be best in class. That's where people like will start to be like, well, John, this is good enough. And I'm like, people can tell when you say that. This is enough. Just get it done. Nobody wants mediocre. You have to give something that's better than what they currently have.
Right.
Yes, it has to be personalized. Yes,
tell when it's mass, right? I mean, if I got chocolate brownies, everyone got chocolate brownies, right? And so I could tell that there really wasn't any thought behind, except for he was on the list that printed out.
Right. And even the timing, to your point on Christmas, I call it planned randomness. One of our core principles is we never send the same gift twice at the same time. So if one year we're doing it in February and in July and October, we're rotating months. So that person's receiving it. They're like, am I the only person that got this amazing gift? Why? Because it's not tied to an anniversary. You call it no ABC gifting, no anniversaries, no birthdays, no Christmas. Now there's nothing wrong with doing gifts on those times, but it's like if you're married or have a significant other, if I show up for my wife on Valentine's Day and on her birthday and our anniversary, do I get brownie points? No, those are expected times. If I show up, especially in the business realm, at unexpected times, now you can send the same thing. If you do the personalization, handwritten note, it's something that is mass appeal, but it's unique and special and personalized. Now I could send the same knife set to 10,000 people, but because it showed up out of the blue, the handwritten note. And so our methodology, our recipe, if your tribe wants to go download our entire playbook, what we walk the Cubs through or Morgan Stanley, giftologysystem.com will give them access to the step-by-step of as they're thinking through a relationship plan. How much should you invest? People are like, well, John, how much should I invest? I'm like 5 to 15% of net profits. They're like, but that's a lot of money. And I'm like, 5%, you keep 95% of the profits and this person's buying their own gift. Are you serious right now? Like you get like, and oftentimes the relationship grows. So really like they end up paying for itself. Like if you do this the right way and inspire people to become advocates, to recruit to your brand, whether that's employees or clients, this really ends up becoming a profit center. You love on them, they love you more, and then they go recruit for you unpaid. Like that's a beautiful thing. That's how I don't have any sales reps. I have account managers. My budget this year is $600,000-700,000 that I'll invest in relationships. No strings attached. And guess what? It comes back to me tenfold because there's no strings attached. There's no manipulation. It's no like, hey, I sent you this. Now you better send me a referral. It's me sending out heart bombs, and our clients are doing the same thing, 5 to 15%. We have some clients that do 20%. I think that's a little radical, but still they're keeping 80% of profits. I don't care what your revenue is. It's profits reinvested back into those relationships. But Giftology System walks through the whole playbook so somebody can take this.
You mentioned this, and for our attendees, I'm going to have in the show notes, johnruhlin.com, his website. Also, the Giftology book, how you can order it on Amazon. That's going to be a link. And then giftologysystems.com is also going to be included there. So there's tons of great information. Like you said, that's a gift from John that you get the whole recipe that other people use, but you got to get the book. The book is unbelievable. Something that we talk about, John, that just blows my mind is the untapped potential of referrals, right? I mean, it's crazy. So when we work with clients, we talk about you got to create an ROX, return on experience dashboard, right? And what are those things that you can directly apply? And one of my favorite things is, and you've talked about it, is earn growth sales, earn sales. All right. So, and what we talk about that is, all right, let's look at, your new clients or the business you got this year. And you can isolate it at new clients and, you got 100 new clients. What percentage came from referrals and what percentage came from advertising? And we had a law firm that was at like 80% advertising, right? And billboards, now it's SEO, all this stuff. And then, 20% word of mouth. They got obsessed with this and now it flipped and they're like 70% word of mouth. And think about that. I mean, all that money goes to profit. The bottom line, you don't have to advertise. I'm telling you that you know this, but our attendees, that if I get you to call us from an SEO ad, right? That's not a warm lead. You are calling 4 other companies, and I better have the best deal, right?
Yeah.
But back to, if you're calling me because you're someone in your center of influence is telling you you have to, right? I can charge you whatever I want, right? Not that we will, but it's like, you ain't calling because I'm the cheapest, because you're comparing. You're calling because, Tony said,
the trust and likability.
You need this company, you need this whatever. And so it's just the mindset of the sales cycle is so much shorter, right? And you don't have to be the best deal. And it just blows my mind how much is left on the table with referrals.
Nobody has a plan to inspire referrals. Everybody's just waiting for them to happen. Right. And our thing is if I have a client, and we just did this with a law firm, they heard us speak at Chris, or if you know Michael Mogo or not, we spoke at their event. They reached out and said, hey, they basically help represent injured, people in the workplace. We did for their top 30 or 40 referral sources. They just landed a multi-seven figure. The largest client of the year came as a referral a week after the heart bombs hit. And they're like, we'd like to say it was just because we're so good, but the fact that it was like literally somebody we hadn't talked to in a while, and that thing showed up, guess what? They went from like to love, trusted, obviously, top of mind. People get hit with so many messages, marketing messages, tens of thousands a day. The reason you don't get referrals isn't because you don't have a good product or service. It's because you're not top of mind, and that person isn't being nudged, isn't being inspired to go out and say like, hey, I heard you say you were challenged with marketing or law or financial services or customer experience. You have to talk to my guy.
Right.
Like those words of like, you got to talk to, because they were looking for an opportunity, not just saying, there's one thing when somebody says, hey, I need a plumber. Who would you recommend? That's cool. That's a referral. But when the other person hears that they have a plumbing issue and they reach out and say, hey, I got a guy, call him. I already talked to him. Right. Done deal. That's a different, I'll take one of those people that are actively advocating, that are an active salesperson, than 100 people that are sitting on their hands.
Yeah.
And most people are like, well, it's a referral. I'm like, no, there's active referrals and passive referrals. And when you can start tapping into getting people to actively refer and be actively loyal, I mean, game over. It's game over.
So that's why I'm so excited, because after years of trying to get you at the Customer Service Revolution Conference, we got you this year. You're speaking at the 2022 Customer Service Revolution Conference in Cleveland, Ohio, which was, back in your day, New York City to you, right? I mean, that was like big city.
That was crazy big. Yeah. When you grew up in a town of 400 people, 417 to be exact.
Right.
Yeah, Cleveland was like, 5 cities put together.
Right.
Metropolis.
So we're bringing you back to Ohio, November 8th and 9th. And I'm so excited. And you're day 2, I think, opening keynote speaker. And you're talking about, the title of your presentation is Referrals Without Asking. So tell our listeners what they're going to get if they come and hear you.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to take what we talked about today, go dive into the full methodology, the full recipe of how to not be passive, wait for things to happen. If you want to build a relationship plan, we're going to walk through, share some case studies and some stories, but walk through the full blueprint of, if you want to inspire your employees to recruit for you, if you want to inspire your clients to recruit for you, that's not an unintentional thing. That's a very intentional thing. The little lever, the little hinge that can swing a massive door of referrals is sending heart bombs and love bombs and having that relationship plan. And so we're going to dive into the details and give them the full playbook.
And this is the key, because our theme this year is the great retention, right? Screw the great resignation. This is about the great retention, and great companies are finding ways. And we're talking about, obviously, team members, but customers, right? And that's what you bring to the table. Again, it's not the obligatory, hey, it's my 5-year anniversary, I'm supposed to get the Amazon $50 card, or Starbucks, and I don't even like Starbucks, right? But you give everyone a $5 Starbucks card, whatever. You're talking about shock and awe of like, whoa, why did I get that? Because we appreciate you, right?
Yeah.
You're someone important to us, which has a shelf life versus everyone gets it. It's part of my compensation when everyone gets it at 5 years, or when I refer someone to you.
Yeah, it's an archaic thing. The anniversary thing is I send nicer gifts to people when they start with me than most people get at their 50th year.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait for somebody to leave the company before I celebrate them. I want to celebrate them when they come on board and ongoing, their spouse, their kids, their families. I mean, the idea of, it's one thing to retain. It's another thing when that person's retained and engaged.
Yes.
You can retain them and make them want to see you win, which we all need. Most people have a bullseye on their back of like, people are like, that guy's a douchebag, or I don't like that person. I don't want to see her win. Why? Because they're not showing up. It's kindness. Like, it's showing up with radical generosity. People want to see givers win. And when you can do that strategically at scale, fun, crazy. I mean, farm boys that are milking goats can end up on the biggest stages in the world. I've never booked with a bureau, ever. It's all been referrals. All.
Yeah.
Why? I'm not necessarily the best speaker in the world, but I have people like you and Shep and Joey Coleman, all these guys actively advocating, because I try to practice what I preach and eat my own dog food. But the idea that I don't care if you're in fast food or whatever else, we're all in the relationship business. And when you can retain and engage and get those people to be inspired, like, fun things happen.
I love it. I can't wait, because you have so many crazy stories of things you've done and things you've had people do. But it's not hard. It's not like we have to go to the extreme. It's systematizing thoughtful generosity that will come back to you 10 times. One of my favorite 2 words, I always say, I wish I could get them tattooed on my forehead, is give more. Right. And that's what you're doing. Give more, in every relationship, to your significant other, to your company, to your employees, to your neighbor, give them more. And the thing to this is that we're very cynical today. And our deal says, our agreement, our contract says you have to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to provide you X, Y, and Z. And most people wait and make sure that the other person does what they say, and then we do. And so what I try to teach myself, and this just totally comes from, your type of philosophy, and I try to teach my 3 boys and all my employees is give X, Y, and Z first and throw in W. Even though it wasn't part of it, they weren't expecting it. Don't wait. Don't keep score, and don't have a good memory. Meaning, don't remember 3 years ago when someone cheated you. Don't let that tarnish, right? So if you borrow someone's pickup truck to move furniture, give them that pickup truck cleaner and with more gas than they gave it to you, instead of, no, they only gave it to us with a quarter of a tank, right? Put $5 in. And that's what this whole thing is about, just being kind and generous and thoughtful and human.
Yeah, it's humanity, right? I mean, when somebody shows up generously, the way, whether you believe in a God or not, the way that we're wired as humans is we want to reciprocate. And oftentimes it's unequal. I mean, you look at studies, Robert Cialdini, all those guys, the mint started because when they give a mint, they cost a half a cent. The tip went up like 16%. Right. We all know that when somebody's generous, now the person that's a jerk or a taker ruins it. And, for a lot of people, but to me, I love when people are cynical about it, because it's like, if everybody was this way all the time, it at some point would start to like become more noise or become commonplace, right? It'd be normal. But because it's so unusual to say it wasn't in the contract, but I'm still going to comp those 50 books, right. Or like, what do you mean? Like free, or are you going to do that no cost, or you're going to show, you just sent that to me?
How much more would you cost if I asked you to do a breakout this morning before you go on main stage, right? I'm there. I flew in the night before. I'll do it. Really?
I'd love to gift that to you.
Yeah.
I
say that to my clients. I say, listen, I'm yours from the moment I get off the plane until I get on. If you want me to meet, one of your big sponsors or top franchise for breakfast, I'd be happy. I got to eat anyway, right? And they think it's almost embarrassing that that's shocking to them, because everyone else is nickeling and diming trying to get more, right? But we charge a fair, a healthy thing. We can afford to give more.
Yeah, well, I think but you get to that point. People think I'll be generous when my business is a certain level. It's like, no, like one of my best clients who just sold his company for multiple 9 figures. He was a teacher making 30 grand and he was still this way. He's now flying on his G4 or whatever to Africa for safaris, doing crazy stuff. But 15 years ago, he was making 30 grand as a teacher. The mindset of you will get more by being more generous, and don't wait to be wealthy or whatever else, or for your company to have all of these things. Like, people are like, that's an excuse. We all have the ability to be generous if we want to be creative about how we do that. And it's not always just dollars. Like, it's about with our time, it's with our words of affirmation. Like, it's like the 5 love languages. We've just focused on the physical because people suck at that so bad. And it is scalable. It's more easily scalable. But at the end of the day, it's just loving on people. Like it's not rocket science.
It's a mindset and a cultural transformation, right? And that's what I can't wait, because I could ask you a million more questions about. You're going to get managers, employees say, I would love to do that. I think like that, but I get in trouble, right? And so, there's so much to this that I love what you're on, and you are changing. You are changing the way people think and the way that people behave. And I just think you're the perfect speaker for our audience, and really to help them with the great retention, right? And the great retention applies to so many more things, right? It applies to our significant others, right? Like you said, I mean, like, this isn't something you should just be doing at work. This should be who it's in you, right? And you do it to all walks of your life.
Amen. Yep. Yeah. Home life just as important as that's your number one clients, right? I mean, that's taking care of home base. So yeah, absolutely, John. This is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
John, thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for being part of the Customer Service Revolution Conference this November. I am so excited for all our revolutionaries to hear your message.
Thanks for having me, bro.
All right. Thank you, revolutionaries, for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening in to this episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner of the DeJulius Group, and I invite you to send us your questions, post a review, and let us know what you liked and want to hear more of. We're happy that you're part of the Customer Service Revolution and encourage you to subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. You'll find us on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcast station.